Hi, I'm Rich Torrey. Welcome to another Level Up Cartooning. All you ever need to follow along with me is a pencil and paper. It doesn't get any easier than that, right? Now, before we get started, make sure you hit the thumbs up and the subscribe button as it helps this channel to grow, and hit the bell so you never miss a lesson. So last week we drew a turnaround of Mabel, the beaver character from the new Pixar hit Hoppers. Remember, a turnaround is a series of drawings of a character from different angles. By doing so, we create a model sheet of that character, starting with a front view, then moving into other angles after extending some guidelines out across the page to help position the character's features. Drawing a turnaround is an excellent way to really get to know a character. This week, we're going to draw a partial turnaround of one of the most recognizable and hilarious animated sidekicks of all time, Donkey from Shrek, voiced by the great Eddie Murphy. I'm calling this a partial turnaround because, like Mabel, I'm not drawing the backside of Donkey because I'm just not. Now, much like last week's turnaround of Mabel, Donkey is created in CGI, and we're drawing on an old-fashioned piece of paper, which adds some challenges, which is what makes it so much fun. Anyway, before we get started, just a reminder that everything I draw in my videos is the first time I'm drawing it. No practice. I say that to let you know the process I use works, and it will work for you too. Okay? So let's draw. We're going to draw our turnaround of Donkey from Shrek step by step, giving you the secret formula to be able to draw him again and again. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know I normally use the character's head to figure out how big the entire character is. In our turnaround of Donkey, his height varies between 2.5 and 3 heads tall, depending on his pose, position, and angle. In other words, however tall you draw his big donkey head, his body is between 2.5 and 3 of those stacked up, again, depending on the pose. So right away, Donkey is a great example of a character whose proportions are flexible, but what is consistent is his structure. He's got that big sort of banana-shaped head with that expressive toothy muzzle, tall ears, that lumpy oval torso, and those somewhat complicated equine legs and hooves. Okay, so let's lay out our roadmap for today's partial turnaround of Donkey. Okay, so there's our roadmap of Donkey. Now before we move on to step 2, I want to break Donkey down using simple shapes, for those of you who want a screen grab. Just something to help you when laying out your drawing. Alright, so now we're on to step 2. In this step we do what I call roughing out the features. I want to remind you that until the third and final step, you want to draw as light as possible. As I mentioned at the beginning, I use guidelines to help me to position Donkey's eyes, eyebrows, muzzle, body, and overall build. But we don't want those guidelines in the final drawing, so you want to draw them light enough to be able to erase them easily. Okay, so let's rough out the features for our turnaround of Donkey. Alright, so they're the roughed out features of Donkey from Shrek. So with the roadmap done and the features roughed out, it's time for that final step. In step 3, we get to have fun. This is where we get to draw the final details of our Donkey turnaround. Because we've already done all the hard work, we're not guessing anymore. Now's the time to slow down, clean up your lines, and make sure each version feels like the same character. That's the key with a turnaround. So as you finish your drawing, keep checking. Keep refining all the way until the very end. Okay? So let's draw in the final details for our turnaround of Donkey. And that's how you do it. There you have it, our partial turnaround of one of animation's most unforgettable sidekicks, Donkey from Shrek. So how do you think you did? Understand, if this is your first time ever drawing any drawing of Donkey, let alone a turnaround, you can't expect to have drawn him perfectly. And let's face it, any angle of a donkey or a horse leg, front or back, is challenging. You'll notice I don't spend time coloring our donkey turnaround because I want my lesson to focus solely on the drawing process. But now you have the secret formula, the process for drawing a turnaround of Donkey. I promise each time you do one of these, it'll get a little better and a little easier. I also promise the more you work with me, the better you're going to get at all of your cartoon characters. So I'd love to see your turnaround of Donkey. If you can, take a picture and post it on either Facebook or Instagram. And don't forget to include the hashtag #LevelUpCartooning. I hope you had as much fun as I did with this one. Remember to subscribe and thanks for joining me. Until next time, keep drawing, my friends.